Beverley Johnston, thank you so much for joining me today. The theme of this whole discussion and this exploration, shaping your journey. Now, you've had a lot to do with shaping your journey. Why don't you share with us a little bit about that?
Well, thanks for having me, Aldo. I feel I'm a percussionist, as people probably already know. I feel like my journey may have been a little atypical. Actually, I was born and raised in Montreal in a suburb called Lachine. And I typically went through elementary school, and my mother saved her money and bought a piano. And we started piano lessons when I was at the age of 7. And then I quit lessons 3 years after, but I was really kind of attracted to the piano and would just go to the piano and start sight reading through a whole bunch of different pop tunes and what have you. Then I entered high school, and I was fortunate enough to have my high school teacher being Ewan Edwards, and he's quite well known.
Yes, we worked with you, and he was amazing.
Amazing musician. I mean, he was in the choral world. Of course, he was the director of the choir for the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. Right. And of course, he had the choirs happening at Lachine High School where I went. But he was just an all-round great musician. Yeah. And he was the one to convince me to go into music. And in high school, I tried all the instruments, and percussion for me was the one where you could make an immediate sound, and it was interesting, all the different kinds of instruments that you could make a sound on. So that was my choice, and kind of the rest is history. I went to Vanier College after that, and had Lanny Levine as my percussion teacher. I don't think he's a musician. I'm not sure if he's
I think he left. I think the last thing after he left Vanier, I think he was playing timpani for an orchestra here in town.
Yeah.
And then I haven't heard from him for a very long time, actually.
I think he switched careers eventually, but he was a great teacher, and but I also pursued more piano playing too, and then I auditioned for the University of Toronto. But basically, my parents said, if you're going to go into music, you have to go into music education, because they didn't see that I could make a living as a professional musician playing. So that's what I did. I don't regret that I went through music education, but I certainly got the performance bug from my teacher at U of T, who was Russell Hartenberger, a member of the world renowned percussion ensemble, as was your percussion ensemble. Their percussion ensemble is called Nexus. So I got my performing bug from him, basically.
It's interesting because it's always somebody who points the way or pushes you in a certain direction. Yeah. And I remember when I think we had a discussion when you were deciding to stay in Montreal or move to Toronto, and like those kinds of those kinds of decisions, like which way do you go? And what made you decide not to stay in Montreal, though?
Okay, well, it's not what you would think. It isn't that I knew about Russ Hartenberger and Nexus. It was because my parents lived in Montreal, and I just wanted to get away from them. So I don't know if that's so sometimes when I talk to my students now, they say kind of the same thing. I just want to get away and, be independent and create my own life, blah, blah, blah. Because I was accepted into McGill, but I decided to go to
no, because I remember when you did that, Pierre Belluz, who was at McGill, who's my teacher, mentioned your name that you had done the audition, and it was interesting. And then you see where people end up going, and there's always there's always a reason. There's always something that pulls you or pushes you, and they're all valid reasons. I mean, it's like, and I'm sure you get this all the time. We have students, and all of a sudden, the students becomes really good. And all of a sudden they start realizing, they look up and they say, I love this, but I don't know if I could make a living, but I'm ready to do this. And then they do. And the next phone call is from the parents, right? Saying, you didn't just push this idea, right? Said, absolutely not. I just teach, we just teach, and I'm sure you have the same experience.
Yeah.
I just give them what I think they need, and they're studying this, so that's what I give. But if they have this passion, this crazy passion, the question then becomes, can you make a living at it? Well, I said, I know a lot of people who did. I also know a lot of people who didn't. But what's the difference? If you don't have the passion, it's not going to happen because you won't do the work. And like anything you love to do, you'll be successful. But, in this particular, I remember this one student, this reminds me around, the parents were so alarmed. They both came over. One's a doctor. The other one is a financial analyst for some big company. And they live, in my neighborhood, which is an upscale part of Montreal, in Westmount, right? So the first question is, can you actually make a living? I said, listen, I'm your neighbor. Did I do okay? First answer. He says, but I said, well, listen, and I know a lot of people like me. Many, many people. I also know a lot of doctors and financial analysts who didn't do so well. It really depends on the individual. If you really want to do it.
Yeah. Mind you, now through the pandemic and all this, and a chance to kind of reflect and absorb, and all the other things that have happened in the world, racism issues and things like that. I've thought a lot about careers and the fact that being successful at a career, is that the ultimate goal of being a human being? Is that all there is? I'm hearing a dinging sound. Is that on my end?
I think it is.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to shut it off. That's me and technology. But anyways, getting back to this issue.
But before you say that, before you say that, let's define, or you define, successful. Let's define that.
Well, okay. I'll put it in one word: happiness.
Okay.
So what is happiness to somebody? It doesn't necessarily have to be a career. It could be something else, or feeling fulfilled inside, somehow, or being curious. As you say, also being passionate, which I think is an important part of if you want to have the career as a musician. You definitely have to have that passion. I mean, Dom Familaro, he's been at COSA quite a few times.
Yes.
That's his mantra,
Of course.
passion.
Sure.
Do you feel the passion? And that's what's kept me going. And that's important to me, but it doesn't necessarily mean because, I've had so many so-called successes in my career that shapes should be the thing that shapes everyone else.
But you mentioned something interesting. This whole pandemic, or this last couple of years, made you reflect.
Yeah.
What other thoughts came to you while you were thinking this? Because it's an interesting topic, because many of us
it is
go through the process. So what else would you add to that one?
Well, okay, now that I had said what I just said, it is my career is important to me. But what I'm saying about others is, there's other ways of fulfilling your life. For me, what I found out during the pandemic is that I love to perform in front of a live audience. Like, I really missed that. In fact, the first, I managed to get one concert in the end of February, just before the March lockdown. but my woman's musical club concert was canceled in April. Okay, so this is the beginning of it. And I kind of got myself involved in different projects. And then I saw on Facebook all the, the videos of people in their studio banging away or doing whatever they do. But for some reason, it just didn't. I did it a couple of times, but then that didn't fulfill me. And then it was the last summer that Julian Armour with Music and Beyond in Ottawa invited me to take part in some videos that he was doing, which was in the church, that Dominion Chalmers Church, which is an amazing church.
Right.
The marimba sounds so beautiful in that church. And I realized, as I was playing, I could feel some drool coming out of the side of my mouth, like, oh my God, I'm back. So that was one thing I realized. I kept myself busy enough learning pieces that were on the back burner, and also playing around on the piano, which was my original instrument.
Right.
So I kept myself busy enough, but I was feeling, I have to admit, a little bit hopeless because I realized in retrospect that it was because that I wasn't in front of a live audience. So, there wasn't a live audience there, but just to be in an actual concert hall performing. My last concert was with the Women's Musical Club concert. Finally happened in November, and there were my students there going, "Yay!" But that felt good too.
No, but when you spend all your life on a stage, and I mean that's home, right? And it's like you're taking out of your home.
It's not to say I don't get nervous. I get naturally nervous when I'm performing, but I love it.
Yeah. No, and for those who may not know your work, I mean, Beverley's an incredible marimba player, and a performer. I mean, in the classical sense, pushing that envelope. Not the stuffy marimba player, stuffy musician who just plays the notes. I mean, this is passion. This is creativity, and it's nice to see people really take it out there and push the boundaries not only of the instrument but the boundaries of performance. You're acting. I mean, I saw you do a concert once at PASIC, and I didn't know you were into that whole acting thing with the with the instrument. It's a performance, and I've always felt like that too. So I said, "Wow, beautiful!" And of course, you're a great player and musician, but seeing you take that approach was refreshing, because I mean, I've always done that, and with the group, we made sure. We even had it choreographed. We had lighting.
I remember that. I remember. Was it Brian McDonald?
Brian McDonald was our
amazing. I think he was at Stratford for quite a few years. Doing choreography for different musicals and what have you.
He was brilliant.
Brilliant.
And one day, I said, one thing, and the guys agreed with me. I said, one of the reasons why I never auditioned for an orchestra for a position is I don't like the concept of sitting down and pretending you don't like what you're playing, dressed in black, and looking like you're going to a funeral. I have a serious problem with that.
I do too.
And they all felt absolutely. And I said, so let's have some real fun with this. And also, seeing a percussion concert, for me, I would go see a concert and they would do a piece, and then the piece lasts 5-10 minutes, and then you have 5 minutes of shuffling instruments around.
Oh gosh,
so you have to
yes.
Wait. And I said, that drives me crazy. So we said we have to fix that. And also all the music stands, and that, we were talking about memorizing everything. Yeah. So I said, no music stands, and we can't have any time in between, because as an audience, when you're watching, this is a concert. It's if you're listening to a recording is one thing. But if you're sitting in a place that is a visual situation, I mean, the audience is a lot more exciting to watch than what's going on stage. That's weird. That's weird for me.
Yeah, that is weird.
So then when
sorry.
No. So when we got, when we were looking around to do something different, and it was John Krypton in Ottawa who I went to see, and I said, "Well, John, what would you suggest? What do you think?" He says, "I've seen you guys. You're fantastic musicians. You do some interesting things, and you're visual, but you should get the staging done, and contact Brian McDonald. Look what he's done with the Canadian Brass, and look what he's done with this opera and that."
Oh, I didn't realize he did the Canadian Brass.
Oh, yes.
Ah, okay.
And then I said, well, that makes sense. That's totally what I'm thinking. So I contacted Brian McDonald. He came out, and it's funny because he would see us do, we played everything from Bach fugues to jazz stuff to contemporary things, that whatever we wanted.
World music.
World music
also.
Said whatever. We were rock and roll guys who studied classical music. We said, I see no difference to us, and we all felt the same. It's 7 notes, and we're going to explore the world. So each one of us went into different areas, which was fun. And he would watch us, and then he would come up with an idea. And for example, the Bach fugue. Okay, here's one that we'd be standing there, and we'd play. And then we'd wait because the voice moves around, right? To each one. So he says, listen. So he would take one of us while we're waiting our 2 bars or 4 bars, whatever it is in between, and then he would move us. So all of a sudden it became a visual fugue. So that voice that we had was moving around, just like from instrument to instrument.
Yes.
So that was that was really interesting. And that was the beginning, and I said, this man is brilliant. Now, when you're watching this ensemble play, these 4 guys playing this 4-part piece, you can actually follow the voice. And it was really interesting, So we did all kinds of great things like that. I mean, it added another level to what we had to think of and remember. Because sometimes in the choreographies, it was splitting. It was like theater. You couldn't miss a cue. And sometimes we did. Like, what was that piece by Mozart? It was 4 hands, 2 pianos, 4 hands.
I don't know.
It's not coming to me now. It's been so long. But we would, two people would play, and then we'd switch. The 2 people we'd switch like this, going around like this, and the choreography had to be so precise. And every once in a while, somebody would forget where they were, or somebody would, the mallet would go in between the notes, and then it couldn't get out in time, so you'd have accidents on stage. And of course, we covered up for it. No blood.
Well, nowadays there are composers out there who are actually composing pieces that have built-in choreography to them. So but I think it's great. I mean, when you're doing a recital performance, you not only have to learn each piece and the notes and play them as well as you can, but you have to think of the whole structure of the recital, and sometimes that's often neglected.
Sure.
It's a composition. The recital is a composition in itself, and you have to shape it properly.
Of course. I mean, if you look at
that's what I tell my students that often enough.
No, and it's good that you do, because you have to think of that element. Because if you're just sitting and listening is one thing, but you're sitting and watching and listening, it's a whole other dimension, right? I mean, if you look at somebody like Barbara Hannigan, right?
Yes. And she's one of my heroes, that's for sure.
And I remember you and I had this conversation when I discovered that she was doing a masterclass in Toronto. I've been following her for years. I think she's absolutely brilliant to be able to sing so well. Yep. I mean, she's a beautiful looking person, but what a great musician. The voice, and she's conducting, and she's playing everybody's parts.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we did a workshop together many years ago in the 90s with fellow named Richard Armstrong, and he's a vocal person, but he's into extended vocal techniques, which was really interesting for me. And Barbara she was still in university, the beginning of university then. So she would have been either in her late teens or early 20s, and a little bit shy and everything like that. And to see her just like completely grow. And I feel like she's like firing at 150% all the time. This is the kind of performance that I'm really into. And in fact, I've been doing some vocal pieces and playing marimba or vibraphone at the same time. And I got a really nice comment from David Friedman, a jazz vibe player. He says, wow, this kind of reminds me of Barbara Hannigan, the kind of stuff Barbara does. And I go, wow, thank you. But yeah, it's challenging, but I love it. I love kind of combining different things and dealing with textures, both in the voice and in percussion playing too. How can you make this sound a little bit different, and how will that enhance the music that you're playing? So I think all these things play into percussion. Percussion, it could be a drum set also.
Sure.
It could be anything. I think it's that's something that Russell had taught me. Percussion isn't just about rhythm; it's also about sound, and the sound world that he introduced me to, along with going to like new music concerts in Toronto and just being in awe of some of the textures that one can make on percussion.
No, that's when you meet people like that, and Pierre Belus was the same. I mean, his sense of texture, nuance, and color was like, your imagination, only is built so far, and he totally blows it, and you're forever searching. I'm still like that. I have to
exploring.
Yes, I mean, just a cymbal for me. I hear many notes. When you play a cymbal, I hear notes, I hear nuance, I hear...
Yes.
You don't just hit a cymbal, for example, right?
That's right.
So it's great to work with people like that, and then you take it further.
Totally.
To explore. It's music.
Yeah.
It's music.
It is. The other great thing there weren't many great things, but the pandemic gave me more time to explore that. To develop that a little bit more, and also to what I call dealing with the geometry of percussion playing. How if you're at a certain angle at the instrument, if you're not if you move your hand like 1 degree this way, it might not be the right angle to get to the next note. So I had time to really kind of focus on that for accuracy purposes, especially on the keyboard percussion. So, it's just like getting into the, that sound world, like Pauline Oliveras had talked about, what did she call it? Just like this really, really focusing in on the sound of something.
Yep.
She had all these different exercises and what have you, and it you need time to do that, and you need to be relaxed to do that kind of thing too. So
and an inquisitive mind
too. Discovery.
Yeah.
Inquisitive mind. Yeah, for sure.
You should write a book on this, Beverley. I mean, these are things that these are things that not everybody comes across, and from the influences that you've had, and I've had some of the same who just push you or open this door to another mindset, and all of a sudden you hear and see things differently, right? And then you say, well, you've taken yourself so far. Well, why? It's wide open what you can do. I mean, when I saw you singing, for example, in this concert, and that piece, this whole theatrical piece, I was flabbergasted. I said, beautiful. This is exactly what we should be doing. Pushing that presentation.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to do that, you don't have to do exactly the same thing, but I agree, to open up your world, your sound world even more. I mean, it takes work. Like I've read so many different books about it, and searched out people who are into that same realm. So it's not like it just came to me. It takes a bit of work. In fact, I'll mention this book that I read during the pandemic by David Usher. I don't know if you know who David Usher is. Yeah, it's called Let the Elephants Run, and it's a book about creativity. And basically, what I got from it, a lot of what I got from it was that, I mean, you need the freedom for your mind to be creative, and absolutely everyone is creative, but you also need to have a sense of structure there. You can't just be creative and think that things are going to happen. So, it's that balance between the two different things.
Yeah, and also the patience and understanding that you should be doing that, and if you don't, I mean, you learn. I mean, like many people think, well, I've arrived at this particular place, I'm good, but I think the creative mind is never really satisfied, because you're here, but you're looking. Well, this is what I really like to do, or want to explore this. So you're always in constant motion and in constant exploration and learning.
Yeah, I remember being involved in one of Casey Cangelosi's podcasts, and it was funny because we talked about creativity, and then he piped in and he said, well, it's okay to be bored in your life. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to just kind of lay back, and because then comes the urge to do something after that. You gotta kind of relax that body and the mind, and just kind of get bored, and then go, oh, hey, whoa, so you do that kind of like paradigm shift in your mind to get to that creative thought, which happens, I find, in the weirdest places. Like, it could happen, taking a shower, or, all of a sudden, or you're baking or cooking, and all of a sudden go, oh, why didn't I think of that before? That kind of thing. But to allow your mind to do that.
Yep. No, but that's interesting, that the concept of getting to a place where you're bored, and that just means you stop for a second and let time go by. And it's like when we sleep. That's the way I'm interpreting this. Mm-hmm. It's like when you go to sleep, your brain resets and calculates and recalibrates and everything. But that's only one night. But sometimes you don't do something for a while, and many creative people have done that. And funny enough, this whole COVID thing has forced many of us who are in like full motion. I mean,
that's the thing. That's the thing.
Then you suddenly stop at 500 hard. Miles an hour.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it was so beautiful one day, because nobody was going anywhere. It was like lockdown, and I opened the patio door, and all of a sudden I'm listening to the sound of the birds. It's like, wow.
No, it's
why can't I do that? Even when I'm rushing here and there, just kind of stop and smell the roses, as they say.
No, it's funny, and I think that's really good for anybody in general, but anybody creative also is in particular, because we took a week, no, 2 weeks vacation by a lake, because you couldn't do anything else, right? So we found this place in the Eastern Townships. And it was so far, there was no...
Where was it, by the way? My parents used to have a cottage.
Near Aylmer Lake.
Aylmer
Lake. No, in the Eastern Townships.
Okay.
It's almost near the U.S. border, but on the Canadian side, the Eastern Townships. Lake Thor. Tiny lake.
Oh, I don't know that, yeah.
It's very small.
Yeah, my parents had a place, it was called Lake Malaga, which was near that monastery, the Saint Benoit de Lac.
Okay, I don't know that one. I heard of it, but I don't know where it is.
You'll have to visit there, yeah.
But this place, I'm not kidding.
It's a beautiful area.
And there are no boats. There are only a few cottages around this place. So every morning I would take a walk, and you hear birds, you hear wolves in the forests.
Wow.
So I recorded some of those birds because I had never heard such a choir. Some days were just amazing. I said, I'm going to have to use this in a piece or a recording or something.
Yes.
So I have it, and I would just stand there in total silence and hear this. And I said, man, I haven't heard this silence in years.
I know. No traffic. It was, good stuff.
Beautiful. So the other question in this whole, like, as we move along, in the theme of shaping your journey, of course you're at a place, and then you're controlled by elements, for example, COVID, and we're stumped. We're stopped, but the creative mind still goes, and you're still creating, and you're doing what we can in one spot, like what we're doing right now.
Yes.
But what's the other kind of thing that keeps you going, that has allowed you now? Because now we've all been given, it's a crazy thing, but it's also a kind of a gift where we've rethought, and now we're reshaping or adding a different shape, perhaps, to the journey.
Well, yes. I'll be specific here because during the lockdown, the Canada Council for the Arts had an influx of money come in for different projects and what have you. So I thought, I'm just going to give this a shot. I didn't think it would work out, but it was something that had been on my bucket list for a long time. And it's a project which with different composers. And the theme of the project is iconic female mythological and historical figures. And so some of these being like Baba Yaga. It's an old Ukrainian folklore of, this wild woman who runs with the wolves. There's Yoko Ono, who's a peace activist and contemporary artist. Georgia O'Keeffe, visual artist, one of my favorite visual artists. Mother Earth, Gaia. And then there's a piece for vibraphone and voice by U of T composer Norbert Palais called Ser Conel. And it's poetry from the Chilean poetry. And one of the poets is Gabriel Mistral, who is a Nobel Prize winner. So it's kind of a female representation through different music, which includes some theatrical elements. The Yoko Ono piece was composed by Alice Ping Yi Ho, and it has a video that goes along with the percussive performance, and I get to scream into a microphone, which is totally cathartic.
Well, that's Yoko, yes.
Yeah, that's Yoko, definitely. Yeah. So this is going to be happening on March 8th, and I think it's going to be live streamed because I'm not sure at that point if there will be live audiences allowed. But anyhow, it's going to be at the Music Gallery in Toronto. And and it's on International Women's Day, so I thought that was appropriate.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
No,
that's kind of been on my bucket list for a long time, and I thank the Canada Council for allowing this to happen. So, and I think they've helped quite a few artists during this time. So much appreciated.
And I think that's important because what most people did not realize, they're all looking, the restaurants are closed, a bunch of things are not working. But one sector that was probably hit the most, apart from, the restaurants to a certain degree, was the live music, live performance, whether it's theater or music performance live. I mean, all of us in that community, imagine, I said to my dentist, because he didn't quite understand, and I said, he said, well, what was it like? I said, well, imagine you're a dentist, and now you don't go into anybody's teeth for 2 years.
Yes.
Your office closed. Nobody comes. And
I wonder if he would be drooling after 2 years.
Right. But I mean, then once you explain it, they say, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." Of course, because then it's shut down. And so
what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So fortunately, there's the Canada Council, Conseil des Arts, and all of these arts organizations who quickly put together some programs. But I think society in general, in Western society, don't really understand the importance of the artist, the importance of the creative process. Whether they're writers or
it's
acting.
I might be like off mark here, but you say Western. There in different cultures, I think art can be perceived a little differently than how we've been brought up with our Western culture. Like art seems to be incorporated more into the community. There's no wall. There's not as much of a wall there. It's like you're out on the street and you pick up a drum and, people gather around. It's just, I think that, and it's associated with different events. African drumming, an event could be, somebody's funeral. And then, of course the music will be there and it, can I have your perspective on this? Because I don't know if I'm on the right track.
No. You're absolutely right. But what I meant is it's not understood well enough how important it is, and that it should be a general omnipresent, and that it should be supported.
Absolutely,
it should be supported, and it's sometimes treated as it's entertainment or something else. It's art, it's music, it's performance. Without that, there's an element missing in society. I mean, there's a famous quote. I don't know who it's by, but a village without music is a dead place, basically.
Yes.
And is music important? Are musicians make the music, or composers write the music? They could be one and the same person, but the artist in the community, whether it's paint or whether it's the visual arts or performance arts of any kind, are absolutely an essential part of any society, and they should not be expected to be self-generating necessarily. For example, and I always give two examples. I said, can you imagine that everybody was on their own as far as education? I mean, you have education in place, and that's a building block of a society, right? And it's supported by government, and everybody goes to school. Well, as much as we can, but we have things in place for it. We have a paradigm. The legal system is there. The medical system is there. So you train musicians. You train doctors. You train lawyers. You train.
I hope you train musicians.
Well, no, we train musicians, but for a different reason.
Yes.
And we always have to remind them. We do it because we see it, but not everybody does. They do get the idea that you train doctors, and then those doctors work in hospitals, and then they either remain in hospitals, open up clinics, but they're there in the system to help guide society, help keep them well and healthy. The legal system, you have a whole paradigm set up for that. And you go to school, you are a lawyer, and then you practice law, and people who need anything in the law, and most of us do all the time, well, there are lawyers, not somebody on the street who's doing that. So he's a lawyer. He or she is a lawyer. The same thing with education. You're an educator. But what about music? I mean, that should be an important element with its paradigm there. You have it in certain cultures, certain countries, mainly this, more socialist countries, like Cuba, for example. You cannot perform somewhere if you're not a trained and a professional musician. Period. It's not like somebody says, well, I went to this hotel in Cuba, and you should have heard the musicians. They're amazing. Well, of course they're amazing. It's like saying I went to the hospital and these doctors were really good. They really knew what they were doing. Well, of course they were trained. Of course, some know more than others, but they're still professional physicians, and that's what they do. Well, musicians, artists, it should be the same thing. They are trained and are professionals and should be held up in society. And that's not going to make money necessarily unless they're in entertainment or some other thing happens. But you need to sustain that, like you sustain education, like you sustain healthcare.
Well,
Arts
we could
should
get
be
into
the
a
other one.
whole hour. We could get into an hour conversation
Yes.
talking about music education, because I think this is where the issue is, that if anything is cut, it's usually the music in the high school, elementary school program, thinking that it isn't important, but it is to shape a human being. It's a part of our nature.
Yes.
It works other parts of the brain that need to be worked. I mean, how many times actually my husband, composer Christos Hatsis, has said, he pushes through a lot of different composers, and some of them become composers, some of them actually become doctors and lawyers and, have other careers, but they never regret having their music education because it's made them think a little bit differently about things. So the music education itself is extremely important, and that's the thing that sometimes gets cut first.
Well, yeah, often it does because it's a number. But what most of us, I mean, and we know this, we live in a world of problem solving. I mean, our minds are always in the process of solving. We have to play in time, play in tune, play the right thing. And it cannot be otherwise. An orchestra does the same. So as a musician, the mindset is such that you're always problem solving. How can this be played better? How could it sound better? That doesn't, that exists in the medical field and research, and in any of those creative ideas where they start something, and that creative mind is a sum total of their experiences and education. Now, whether it's a musician, a doctor, or an entrepreneur, is that creativity of solving constantly, so you don't become part of a dead place or a rock.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what we're forming. We're forming people who think, right?
Yes.
and always solution. What is a solution? You don't live the problem. We know the problem. Got it. Now let's fix it.
You got that right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, but I mean, it's interesting to have these conversations, because I mean, you get to a place where you've done enough that you don't have to justify what you're doing and what you're thinking, but also it's important for people to know, like, what took you there, what takes you there, what keeps you going, and what's that thing that keeps you going, for example.
Well, I look at the trajectory of my career. I'm almost 65 years old now. Hey, I'm going to collect my pension. But having said that, my career has changed over the years. I started out freelancing in Toronto, and then I started becoming interested in doing more solo. And then I started doing a lot of recording. And then I decided, well, I don't want to do as much of the freelancing because it was just too much happening. So I specifically honed in on playing extra with the National Ballet Orchestra, cutting out some of the other freelance things, and then focusing in on some solo. As I'm in my 60s now, and my body isn't as agile as it used to be. So I've had to really think carefully about the kind of repertoire that I play, how I play it, how often I play it, how much I can practice during the day, without hurting myself, different exercises that I can do to build up my endurance. And then I find that now I'm definitely more project specific. It's all about the project. And then I've balanced that out these days with my teaching at the University of Toronto, which I really enjoy. And I just love seeing how creative those students are. And we have a good leader now, Ayun Wong is the head of the percussion. It used to be Russell Hartenberger. So she's taking them in different directions too. Like there's more emphasis on technology and how you can incorporate that into percussion. So it's all, there's always something new and exciting happening. But I do find that as at my age now, it's more project specific, like this concert on March 8th. And I love that, just kind of working out all the details for the concert.
And also, I mean, you're at a place now that you can allow yourself to be more specific and also bring that experience from the past to here. And there's another thing that we sometimes forget is, we have to make room for all those other people to take the place that we once had, because that's not necessary for us anymore to be there.
Very important
for many reasons. So we have to move in the direction that we're seeing or being taken into, leaving room, and also exploring and being the visionaries if we can be, and exploring things even if things don't work the way we see it, but at least we're exploring and we have the confidence to say, well, let me try this. If it doesn't work, I'll try something else. But I see what I want.
Yes.
And then you're still digging. There might be that diamond or that gold could be right here, what I'm seeing, but you can't do that when you're running around doing all these other things. You're not exploring. You're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Pushing boundaries.
Even in the 80s when things were just starting, like I had this recording called Marimba, Bach on Marimba. But,
I remember that.
Yes. So I did the recording in 1987, but it just took a lot of time to figure out the pieces, to practice the pieces, shape the pieces, all that kind of stuff, and the multi-tracking and all that. So I had to let go of some of the freelance things. It was always that balance for me, to try and do the best I could with the solo performance, and yet I had to make a living financially from some of the freelance things that I was doing. So it's always that balance.
Yeah, and it keeps you going. When you say 65, I mean you look 25, but I don't know what your secret is.
Do you know there's a filter on Zoom? I put a bit of the filter. I call it the Doris Day filter. In the film industry, Doris Day apparently had a filter on the camera.
Oh yes, I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, she lived a long time too.
There you go.
But anyway,
she did, yes.
Yeah. But anyway, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, Beverley. You're one of my favorite people, and it's always fun. We can laugh.
I'm a big fan of yours too for all these years. So
Thank you.
I think you were one of the first percussionists I met in Montreal.
Ah, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because I like professional percussionist, because you were already working when you were at McGill. You were already out there. So, any other percussionist I knew, we were still just studying, but you were the first one I met who was a real professional percussionist. PRO.
Yes.
PRO.
It's amazing. I'm going to be writing a book because I can't remember half the stuff, those things, and the whole trip. Why you do things, and it's always nice to meet and run across people, on at different parts of your life, and then where they are later and what they're doing, and actually inspire each other sometimes, which is really nice, Beverley.
Yes.
And you're one of those people.
Too, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
you so much for having me.
To be continued.